right, guys, I am Ann Vulcan. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. And I teach fourth and fifth grade down in Lee County. And I had the pleasure this week of working with Karen and Monica and Candace as we worked in Dr. Curtis Gurley's lab with Dr. Jeremy as well. It was a really great experience. It was really exciting. You know, as teachers, we're really used to our admin coming to us and asking more, wanting a lot from us, but it was a really exciting experience because it was the opposite where Dr. Gurley was, what can I do for you? It was just so great. So excited for the collaboration. So his lab is the NERI lab, I gotta put my glasses on to read it. It's the, I'm gonna forget it, I wrote it down. I'm gonna find it. Anyways, his lab has wind tunnels and all sorts of different equipment to test wind loads, wind strengths. And so that's where we were focusing what we wanted to do. So if you could go ahead to the next slide. Our basic plan was we're going to build a hurricane house. The students are going to design a house that will survive a hurricane in given conditions. So this was designed for grades 4 through 12. And we're focused on fourth and fifth grade science standards, but also collaborating with high schoolers as they would be mentors and collaborate with an elementary student. 3 of us taught fourth and fifth grade and 1 was high school. So that's how we combined it. And also we can adapt it to other grade levels. Next slide, please. So primary subject areas, obviously science, but we found a lot of interdisciplinary connections between math, social studies, ELA, and we'll get into that a little bit more. And obviously a lot of Kagan connections for those who use Kagan. There's a lot of collaborative work, even if we have to be doing virtual learning. And I just wanted to point out on the first slide, you don't have to go back, but there's a little button that says click here for the lesson plan. So when these are posted, you could just click that button and it'll take you to the actual detailed lesson plan. Next slide. So these are all the standards that we found for this project. We actually came up with 2 other projects that have some other standards, and we're gonna, after this, maybe next week, go ahead and complete those lesson plans just too, because we were just excited about all of them. But these are the 4th and 5th grade standards and 9th grade standards for physical science, earth science, and then all the nature of science standards that apply. Next slide. So the multidisciplinary connections we were talking about, this is just some of them. I know in my district, Lee, we have for reading, we use ReadyGen, and they have a whole unit that they talk about natural disasters, and they have a lot of fiction and nonfiction text. In social studies, there's 4th grade standards about weather impacts and citizens working to influence the government as far as hurricane preparedness. There's the document-based question in DBQ, why are hurricanes so dangerous? And again, all of these are links to resources. There's fiction books, Blown Away, and I Survived Hurricane Katrina, which I know my kids have loved those I Survived books. Nonfiction, National Geographic about Hurricane Katrina, the National Hurricane Center, which is great to track and get all information about hurricanes. Common Lit is a free source for fiction and nonfiction by grade level. So they have more high school level ones on this about hurricanes, weather stem data from local weather stations. And also Monica and our group is a member of the Civil Air Patrol, and you can join for $35 and you can get a weather kit that has an anemometer and all these other things. So there's a link there to find that information too. So it's pretty interesting. Next slide. All right, so like I said, the main objective is how can they design a house that can withstand hurricane force winds? So we're gonna explore the principles of designing buildings for wind loads and an optimal house that would withstand hurricane force winds, slipping versus tipping. And of course, all of these incorporate the nature of science standards from just the discovery, the development, the planning, and the carrying out. Next slide. So before we get started, we have to have the kids understand what is wind, what are the different types of windstorms, and how does an object feel the wind loading, since that's going to be what's acting upon it, slipping or tipping. Next slide. So these are resources we came up with for this background knowledge. Brain Pop, Vocabulary, Study.com, Weather Whiz Kids, Study Jams, teacher engineering, and consumer education. And those are all links that will take you to those videos and activities for winds, hurricanes, and natural disasters to help you build that background knowledge. Go ahead, next slide. And again, our lesson plan has a lot more detail on it. So we came up with some targeted vocabulary specific for this lab, which may not necessarily be in your standard lab, but it's good for this. We've got the basic elementary, and then we've added some high school vocabulary. We've developed a Quizlet to practice the vocabulary words, and that's also linked again in lesson plan. Next slide. Materials that they're going to need: construction paper or cardstock, excuse me, balsa wood, hot glue, wood glue, cutting scissors, notebook for keeping records, Lego sets, Cornell notes, and virtual meeting resources, camera, Zoom, etc. Next slide. Okay, so this is what we're going to be doing, the whole step. So we use the 5E model. The first step is introducing the project and wing concept. Now, let me take a step back. We planned this project to be a very long-term project to last the whole semester. Not that it's going to take something every day, but that from beginning to end. So the first concept, like I said, more details in the lesson plan, introducing it, it takes about 2 days. And we had to complete by week 3 of the beginning of school, because we all know there's procedures and, you know, it's a crazy time. And at each of these phases, we're also planning to have virtual meetings with Dr. Gurley and his group, and for him to introduce his lab, to introduce the students, to ask questions. He's so ready to be so hands-on. And also, I forgot where I was with that, but so that first stage will be done by week 3. The next one is going to introduce and understand what gravity instability is. That I believe is when they're going to build a Lego model to sort of do an initial test of hurricane force winds and how to design something so that the winds either, you know, will impact or not impact. And that'll take about 2 to 3 weeks and complete by week 6. The next one is to extract the lessons to apply a model. So they're going to take what they learned from the Lego, design with cardstock an updated model. And then this is where we're going to end up coordinating with our high schoolers. They're going to be mentors. So once our elementary kids have created the model, they're going to have to write directions on how to create a balsa wood model, because we're going to send that to the high schoolers. The high schoolers are actually going to build, because we started talking about elementary school kids and cutting balsa wood, and we just thought this would actually be a great way for them to work together. So the elementary kids will send their design to the high school kids. The high school kids will actually build the balsa model, and we'll also, again, be coordinating with the lab and our mentors. And then they will send one of the balsa models, they're going to make 2, to the lab and 1 back to the students so they have their own. And then finally we'll have the wind tunnel tests in Dr. Gurley's lab, and we'll be live streaming those unless everything's awesome and we can somehow manage to go up there and be in person, because he's more than excited to have us there. And then evaluate the results. And we have assessments, if you want to go to the next slide. This is just a picture of his boundary layer wind tunnel, which it's amazing and fascinating. And we had so many questions, but this is where the testing would be done. Go ahead to the next slide. So our assessments would just be the testing, the recording. We have a rubric for the house challenge, the Quizlet, and we're creating an anticipation guide. And I think that's it. Also, sorry, Dr. Gurley was going to have an undergraduate mentor as well to help out with the student. So we have a whole lot of collaboration. It's really exciting. Okay, that's it. Thank you.